my borough, nearly 40% of children with an EHCP did not get their first choice of secondary school. I don't tell you this to try and scare you. That's the last thing I want to do. I tell you because I want you to be prepared. In the UK, we are in the midst of a special educational needs crisis. As councils go bankrupt, people around the country are waking up to what we've been banging on about for ages. Special educational needs budgets are woefully underfunded. At the moment, this may be playing out in terms of whether you get the appropriate school for your child. In most cases, local authorities will try and push you towards the cheapest and simplest option, regardless of whether it's appropriate for your child. You do not have to accept this. You can appeal. What's more, at the SEND tribunal, that's where your case goes, it's a court and it's where your case goes if you appeal, 98% of cases are found in the parent's favour. So the law is on your side. In this video, I want to talk you through some of the steps you'll need to take if you have not been given a school place that is appropriate for your child. So we're going to start with the fact that this is being recorded after February 15th to 2024. So I know some people may be watching this in 2025 or whenever, but the 15th of February is the deadline for informing parents of secondary school places if your child has an EHCP. If you have not been told, then you need to get onto the phone, email, whatever it takes to get that answer, because this deadline is not a nice to have, it is a statutory deadline. And unfortunately, again, in my local borough, 20% of parents were not told within that time frame. So good chance is the first thing you need to do is just get on their case, start filing those complaints if they're not telling you, and remind them of their legal responsibilities. The next thing I want to flag is something called the Send Change programme. Again, this is being recorded in February 2024, and this is currently a trial programme that is being run in some parts of the country. Its aims is to test out parts of the government's white paper around SEND reform. And it's not happening everywhere, it's just happening in some regions. Now, I just saw a very interesting video from EHCPs, who are the charity that support parents with legal advice if your child has special educational needs. And they were saying that even if your area has been chosen as one of the rollout areas, it does not affect your legal rights. So one of the things they are trialling is local authorities just telling parents where their child will go. So currently you may, if you're in one of those areas, just be told this is the school you're having, but EHCPs want you to know that you can still appeal, because this is not yet law. They are just testing on whether it could become law. And hey, let's hope it doesn't, because that will be a bit of a disaster. So the next point is to ask to see the consultation documents. So the local authority should have consulted with your first and second, if you had one, choice of schools. And you have a right to see those documents to find out why they turned you down. Now, this is important because there are limited reasons why a child with an EHCP can be turned down, and the schools need to stick to these. And I'm actually going to read out what EHCPs have on their website. I'm going to read it because I want to make sure I get the wording right. So they say, the only reason the local authority can refuse the request is if 1. The setting is unsuitable for the age, ability, aptitude or special educational needs of the child or young person. 2. The attendance of the child or young person would be incompatible with the provision of efficient education of others. Or 3. The attendance of the child or young person would be incompatible with the efficient use of resources. So this is set out in section 39(4) of the Children and Families Act 2004. EHCPs say the local authority has to prove that at least one of these conditions applies in order to dislodge the parent or young person's preference. So they will have to comply with these. You can see sometimes the wording is a little bit vague. So the attendance of the child or young person would be incompatible with the provision or efficient education of others is often used when they say we don't have space. So not having space is not a legitimate reason, but they can say we don't have space and it would be incompatible with the education of others. However, in court, a judge is unlikely to rule that having just one more student is going to be incompatible with the education of others. So if they're saying there is no room, still appeal, because the law is on your side. And if you're saying it's just one more child, I'm not sending coach load over there, it's just one more child, they are unlikely to win that. And another reason they often give is funding. Funding is not appropriate. Again, this is not a valid reason. As you can see from the reasons I've read, it is not listed on there. Furthermore, if you've read the same code of practice, and this is from the same code of practice, and you need to read the same code of practice, and I'm going to put a link in the description because I want you to read the same code of practice that much. I know it's big, but you can actually skip loads of sections. And the reason I want you to read it is because then you will know your legal rights. And that is so important, because at the moment, these local authorities will just try anything. And if you know your legal rights, you will be on much better ground. So look in the description. You will see a link to the same code of practice. Download it, make yourself a cup of tea and get reading. So as I said, in the same code of practice, it states that the local authority must fully fund the provision in the child's EHCP. So that's regardless of cost. If you should have a costings mapping, and they have to fund it. So a school can't say, we can't take this child because we don't have the money, because the local authority should be providing all the money. So those are some of the common reasons. Now, you might decide that this school has just been such beats that you actually don't want to send your child there, in which case you may decide, I don't really want to have this fight. But if you do want to have the fight, if you do think that this school is the best option, regardless of what they're saying, your child needs to go to this school, then what you need to do is get your case lodged at tribunal ASAP. Don't mess around. Don't mess around with meetings or mediation or any of that stuff. Just get it lodged. I mean, you can still do meetings. You can get your appeal lodged and then still say, well, I'm still open to discussions, but I'm still going ahead and getting this case lodged. The reason I say that is because, as I say, we are in the middle of a SEND crisis and the system is falling apart. And the number of cases that have been lodged at tribunal has gone through the roof. I'm actually in the middle of a tribunal case myself at the moment. I've been given a year until my hearing date. Now, I don't want everyone to panic now. It's not necessarily the case if what you're doing is appealing the name school. I think they do try and fast track those ones, but it is a long wait. There is a massive backlog of cases because of the crisis. So if you are going to appeal, what you're appealing is section I of your EHCP. That is where the school is named. So that's section I. And I'm not going to run through every single stage, but you should have information on the letter that was sent to you from your local authority about how to start the appeals process. Now, if you're in a fortunate enough position that you can afford a solicitor, great. Although my experience was it was actually quite hard to find one. Again, we are in a special educational needs crisis and the solicitors are all absolutely backed up with cases. But by all means go for it. I'm not going to make any particular recommendations here because things change and I don't know when you're going to be watching this video. And also, as I said, there's such a backlog of cases that some people may find that they just can't get onto the books of any solicitor. You do have other options. You can use a SEN advocate. There are a few agencies around there. Again, I'm not going to recommend any, but you can maybe ask around locally. They are cheaper than a solicitor, but they are not legal representatives, but they often have lots of legal knowledge. The other thing you can do, and what I have ended up opting for just because I was starting to run out of money, is doing it yourself with the support of friends. And this brings me on to my final point, which is you need to look after yourself. I've had quite a rough week, mainly because of my tribunal case. The support I was meant to be getting from my advocate was not up to the standard that I was happy with, and so I've had to take it on all myself. And I was sitting at a table on most of the day on Sunday, covered in papers, trying to sort out all the paperwork for the evidence deadline, which was fast approaching. It was extremely stressful and it was not how I wanted to spend my weekend. I also then got myself into a bit of a muddle because I am not an expert on any of this, and I had to go out and seek help and support from friends to say, what do I do next? I don't understand. I have to say also the helpline at the tribunal were very helpful, so you can always call them and ask them for advice. But I also did lean into my communities because I was feeling so overwhelmed by it all. And people stepped up. People who have been through this before me were able to advise me. So find your communities. There are some great communities online. Have a look on Facebook. Search for EHCP advice. Look on Contact, the charity for disabled children and their families. They have a Facebook page, great place to ask these kind of questions. Lean into those communities because there are parents in there with a wealth of knowledge and advice, and they can help you, and they don't charge anything. And the other thing is about looking after your mental health. So I have got much better at recognizing now when I'm getting overwhelmed, and I could tell over this weekend, because I've been working so hard on this, my mental health was starting to get a little bit frayed around the edges. So I took a break and I decided I need to do something for me. So the first thing I did was just go out and go for a walk, to move my body, to get out in nature, to take a big lungful of fresh air and just try and clear my head a bit. The other thing was that I just talked to some friends just to say, this is really tough. And I got lots of support from those people that just made me feel like a little less alone. And the third thing I did was sat down and did some tapping. Now, if you've watched a few of the videos on the channel, you have heard me talk about tapping. If this is your first video, then let me explain. Tapping is a mix of the ancient tradition of acupuncture with Western psychotherapy. So what we do is we tap on certain parts of the body and recite statements, and this releases cortisol, the stress hormone, and it has an impact in less than 10 minutes, and I find it great for all sorts of situations, and it was great for this situation. And I could just, as I was tapping, just feel my body starting to relax. I also had this morning a bit of meditation time and a bit of yoga just to get rid of all those knots and tensions that the stress had caused in my body. If you want to learn more about tapping, I will put a link at the end of this video that you can learn a little bit more about tapping, and I will also put a link in the description box if you want to sign up for some free tapping resources that I've produced exclusively for you. I will also put a link to another video I've done about self-care techniques, because you are really going to need it if you're going to enter into this process. It is tough. but you can do it. You can be the best advocate for your child. So with that, I wish you all the best of luck if you are going through this process, and know that you are not alone. There are thousands of parents out there fighting this same cause. So connect with them and share your stories and support each other. Good luck. I hope that video got you going with a plan for what to do if you need to appeal Section I, that's the school named on your child's EHCP. As I talked about in that video, if you're going through this process, it is really important that you look after yourself. I've given some ideas in that video, but I've got 2 other videos here that I think will give you some extra tips on how to prioritise self-care. So we've got one with some self-care tips and another which explains what tapping is. I mentioned it in the video. It's a really useful technique for relieving stress and overwhelm, and it is ideal for you if you are going through the appeals process. I wish you all the best of the luck with getting an appropriate school place for your child, and watch these videos.